Be seated. Would be wonderful. Thank you so much. Like they say, technology is a boon and a bane, and that's how we live these days. But I think all's well that ends well. So thank you so much, everybody. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a hearty, hearty warm welcome to all of you. I hope we charged up with lunch, and we're very excited for this very wonderful session that we're going to host right here. Thank you so very much for joining us. Thank you to all our esteemed guests who are going to come right here on stage and share their thoughts and experiences with all of us. So the topic for this session is India Rising, Defense Opportunities in ASEAN and BIMSTEC. Founded in 1925, Indian Chamber of Commerce is the leading national chamber of commerce and the leading chamber in Eastern India with pan-India operations having head office in Kolkata and offices in New Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Chennai, Bhubaneswar, Guwahati, Chandigarh, Siliguri, Patna and Ranchi. The chamber works very closely with most of the central ministries and on issues plaguing Indian industry, brings them on the table and suggests the way forward. The Chamber organizes more than 200 programs annually within the country and leads more than 24 delegations globally. The membership of the Chamber spans across many large corporations, domestic companies, startups, and exporters, etc. Thank you very much. So yes, let's get the session started. May I please invite Mr. Pradeep Sureka, President, Indian Chambers of Commerce, to kindly come on stage and share the welcome remarks. Let's have a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. So, up next, let's invite Mr. S. Ranganathan, Executive Vice President and Head Weapon and Engineering Systems, Business L&T Defense, to kindly come on stage. Thank you, sir. Now, may I please invite Air Vice Marshal Mr. Arvind Verma, Advisor Zen Technologies, to kindly come on stage. Thank you, sir. Up next, we have Brigadier Jaspreet Singh Khera, President, Hind Defense Equipment Private Limited, Defense and Aerospace Consultant. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Commodore Girish R. Pradhan, Retired Executive Director, BDL. Sir, warm welcome. And we have Mr. Vinayak Sen, CEO, Armasen Integrated. So if I can request you to kindly come on stage. Let's have a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, once again for these esteemed dignitaries right here on stage. And not to forget, Mr. Zulfikar to also kindly come on stage. Thank you, sir. All right, now may I request Mr. Pradeep to kindly come to the dais and share the welcome address.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome all the dignitaries on the dais, and thank you for each one of you to be here present in this session. India accounts for 3.7% of global military spending, making it the third highest military spender in the world. Defense expenditure constitutes nearly 3% of our GDP, which is approximately $73 billion. This was the 2020 figure. We have a huge coastline to defend. We have a huge, probably the highest, I learned a few days back that we have the highest battlefield in India. We have the highest airport in India. So I think India is a complex country with complex defense needs, and I do congratulate our entire armed forces for their services to the country and to the people. Thank you, sir. India exported defense equipment to the value of nearly 8,400 crores in 2021. And the Indian government has set the defense production target at about 25 billion by 2025, which includes about 5 billion from exports. The primary stakeholders in achieving these objectives are government through policy facilitation, the armed forces through development of future strategy, defining of qualitative requirements of future weapons in keeping with our political objectives, and DRDO PSU combined to develop the requisite technologies. Last but not least, the private industries, who through are current toddlers in the business, but set themselves the American defense industry as role models. In order to give teeth to the Make in India initiative in the defense sector, some fundamental changes need to be made, which include Make in India defense sector must be seen as design in India. For this purpose, we need to invest in talent and technology. Our IITs can prove invaluable in these areas in terms of developing and nurturing talent, setting up incubation centers, prototype designs, testing, and production upscaling. The private industry needs the assurance of long-term indigenous procurement to be able to make viable investments in technology and manufacturing assets. Policy continuity by all governments in the future needs to be assured for private investment in the military and the defense sector. On this occasion, would like to highlight some promotional steps that are adopted most recently on domestic market to encourage more participation from startups and micro, small, and medium enterprises in defense research and development in achieving the Atmanirbhar Bharat goal. The Defense Minister, Shri Rajnath Singh, released a new version of Defense Research and Development Organization, DRDO, Procurement Manual 2020 on 20th October last year. To increase defense manufacturing in India and make the country a reliable weapon supplier to friendly countries, the Indian government allowed FDI up to 74% through automatic route, and results were viable. FDI equity inflow in the defense sector for April 2020 to June 2021 stood at US 10 billion, or rather actually only 10 million, as per data released by the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. On October 15, 2021, the Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi dedicated the 7 defense public sector undertakings created through the restructuring of the Ordnance Factory Board to improve functional autonomy, efficiency, growth potential, and innovation in the defense sector. Simultaneously, India signed contracts and cleared projects worth 54,000 crores to enhance military capability with locally produced weapons and systems, including transport planes, tanks, helicopters, airborne early warning systems, and counter-drone weapons. In November 2021, India's Raksha Mantri Shri Rajnath Singh inaugurated the first private defense manufacturing facility in the Uttar Pradesh Defense Industrial Corridor. The facility, operated by Airoli Technologies, a wholly owned subsidiary of PTC Industries, will manufacture parts for aircraft, helicopter engines, structural parts for aircrafts, drones, and submarines, ultralight artillery guns, space launch vehicles, and strategy systems. Also in November 2021, Defense Acquisition Council boosted the Make in India initiative by according acceptance of necessity to capital acquisition proposals worth nearly 8,000 crores for modernization and operational needs of armed forces. In the same month, the Indian Army signed an MOU with the Bhaskar Acharya National Institute for Space Applications and Geoinformatics, Gandhinagar, Gujarat. This MOU will facilitate exchange of knowledge and collaboration for development of GIS and IT-based enterprises, resource planning, software, train content, telecast audiovisual content, research and knowledge partnership, technical support, and upgradation for resource. As a proud example of Make in India initiative, I'd like to mention that Bangladesh and India have taken a major step in operationalization the 500 million line of credit for purchasing Defense India items from India. Although it is a defense LOC, it also plays a role in our international development partnership framework. This contract will widen the path of further cooperation between two countries in terms of defense and security. With these few words, I thank all my panelists again and my guests today to this very interactive session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Up next, if I may please invite Mr. S. Ranganathan to kindly come on the dais and share a detailed presentation on defense opportunities in ASEAN and BIMSTEC. Thank you, sir.
Namaste and good afternoon. Because in Hindi and Sanskrit, it's very easy to say namaste at morning, evening, afternoon. In English, you have to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So let me start with a little bit about, I've been told I should restrict to 5 minutes by Mr. Bodhisattva, so I'll try and see if I can make that. I'm a talkative person, but let me try. Yeah. You want me to move the slides or you'll move the slides? I'll move it? So broadly, the coverage, I'm sure the coverage is of interest to the audience, but I thought that when you get a podium, I need to market L&T, so there will be one slide, just one slide on L&T and not much. But more importantly, what has been the journey and what is it that we need to do if, A, we have to be viable suppliers to the Indian Armed Forces, B, look at where we can fill the gap for the export opportunity, because ultimately exports is what is going to earn the precious foreign exchange. More importantly, position India as a technology system provider. In conclusion, we'll just come up to see. I'm sure the other panelists have interesting points to share, and we will have an interactive session to make the whole it more participative. L&T in defense, of course, we've been in defense for 35 years, and that's in our second innings. The first innings was before the World War. I will not go there, though. It's been, with due respect to my co-panelist, Mr. Vinayak, we've been considered startups in our organization because we continue to be small. L&T is a 160,000 crore company, and I don't even want to share what's our turnover. So you can imagine how much of a startup we are considered. But what happens is there are three things which the government, the policy, and the segment allows within the country, both for domestic and for export. But there are a couple of things which need to be addressed, and this we'll try and see if we can answer through the question and answer session that's going to be happening after most of us speak. Over these 35 years, L&T has been able to develop and supply systems which are installed either on ships or land. I may not be able to take the ship names for want of sensitivity information, but across 400 locations. And what I can share, I will say, I'll tell you that in May of 2021, when the country went through a very difficult second phase of COVID, we were called by the then chairman, DRDO, Dr. Satish Reddy, on May 17th and said, can you supply 200 oxygen plants? So I asked him, when, sir? He said, July. I said, which year? He said, July 21. I said, that's worse than a tornado. We said, and then very happy to say that he flagged off the 220th one, if I have to be very precise, on July 31st. So we can do it in the country, and I'm not saying because L&T did it. All I'm saying is we had an ecosystem in the country which could look at the compressors, which could look at the whole entire piping, the gammetry. Country can do it. I think that's a very positive note we can. While oxygen plants may not be the most technologically advanced, that is also to save lives. And I think when we talk of defense, saving lives of our country, men and women, becomes very important. So that much on L&T, and let's just get on with the presentation itself. You know, if you look at technologies all across the world, the governments across the world, including in the Western nations, are willing to invest in defense because the spin-offs are far higher. For many of the young people here and for some of us on the old, Hotmail was one of those famous email IDs we had. I don't know how many of you know about Hotmail. It was actually the American military which used to use hypertext markup language, HTML. Okay, 60s, 70s, 80s. It was left to an Indian, again, Mr. Sabir Bhatia, who realized that this can be used for the generation which were coming in, the 20-year-olds in the 80s. He said, but HTML sounds very difficult to pronounce, and it has more syllables than one would like to roll their tongues on. He made it as Hotmail, putting a couple of vowels in between. This is the origin of Hotmail. And that technology today, of course, today there are innumerable ones. I don't want to go there. But why did that email technology come? Because somewhere in the US, in the Western world, they invested. That's one place where the return on capital employed, Mr. Vinayak, you'll agree with me, return on capital employed is not an issue at all. They invest because country's defense and strength is important. So self-reliance originates from the defense sector. The strategic sectors, of course, the nuclear, the space, the oil and gas, especially in the current last 40, 50 years, oil and gas has played an important role. But defense still is something where money can be pumped in. Atmanirbhar Bharat. You know, when we talk of Atmanirbhar, it's a very nice Indian language word. We think that it is reliance in terms of making. I think Mr. Surekha did talk about it. It's not making, it's creating value, creating intellectual property within the country. I'll give an example. Why is it very important? Let's say that we buy an equipment from any part of the world. In today's electronic warfare and other things, they are able to program it. And if your weapon goes outside your boundary limits because you're waging a war, they have so nicely programmed it, the weapon will not function at the most critical moment. Do we want our soldiers to give up and maybe give up their lives too? No. Whereas when we create that value within the country, we give them the flexibility, because we as civilians may have access to only up to a point. The people who are fighting the war in the war theater, they have access to far wider information and highly dynamic thing. If we provide them the flexibility that yes, you can change the coordinates, you can beat the GPS inputs you get from not a friendly country in that, and we can still fight and win a war. And this n number of examples are available in India for systems which have been designed, conceptualized, realized within the country. And I think all of us need a pat on the back, because indirectly or directly, each of us have contributed to this ecosystem. There was of course, I know there are very esteemed panelists from the who are earlier in uniform, and the view of DRDO in our public perception is quite different than what we, having been partners to DRDO, have experienced. The number of products that we have found success, the entire integrated guided missile development program, while Bharat Dynamics takes care of the articles, the missiles per se, the weapon delivery systems for every of those have gone out of industries like L&T. Conceptualized maybe at DRDO or by the industry partnership, thereafter realized within the Indian ecosystem. There's one thing where we have a challenge, and I'm sure everybody will agree. This is the electronic components of military grade. That we have a problem in the country. We are not able to do it thanks to the whatever happened in semiconductor complex Chandigarh a couple of decades back. But if we keep that aside, there's enough in this country to create, to add, to integrate, and to make a system which can enable our soldiers to fight wars. Last year, thanks to the policy advocacy by various industries through various bodies like SIDM and FICCI and ICC and such bodies, we've been able to impress upon the government that R&D cannot be reserved for the state, in the sense it can't be just left to only the DRDO, the public sector undertakings indirectly, and of course the Ordnance Factory Board. Till October 21, they were Ordnance Factory Board. Thereafter, they've been converted, corporatized thereafter. And therefore, our appeals over many years were heard, and 25% of the R&D budget, which is generally 100, if 100 units are reserved for DRDO, 25% has been reserved as a policy facilitation in the budget for defense R&D. Policy is one thing, translation to action is another. We are struggling. It's 7 months since the budget has been announced. Believe it or not, we are still to cross the T's and dot the I's. Defense exports. Over the last few years, and please understand, all the panelists may be a little, they will not be as indulgent in answering questions about which countries they export to because of the respective secrecy agreements we may have signed with the country. But defense exports, not only is the Ministry of Defense encouraging, but Ministry of External Affairs is taking a very proactive role thanks to the positioning of India in the global scenario. We have challenges. Of course, without challenges, the life is not at all exciting. The government is giving boost. There are multiple ways in which we have exported. There's been a fabulous private-public partnership. Why I say that is the private industry, the public sector, the DRDO, all come together, and as brand India, while we may have our own respective subsystem systems, but as brand India we are giving, and we have delivered any number of systems in the specific areas which is ASEAN. And BIMSTEC, of course, it is, I would say that would be the toddler steps that Mr. Surekha talked about, but we are getting there. One of the reasons why perhaps the exports is not moved at a pace is quite often scenarios emerge because of the geopolitical situations where we may want to export. L&T, about 30% of our business comes from exports, non-defense. But if we were to ask what comes out for defense, it's not so much, because what is, today the government may give a clearance that yes, you can export to this region. Day after tomorrow, because of whatever happens, it could be a war in Europe, it could be a currency fluctuation, it could be anything, or prime lending rate going up in the United States, whichever is the reason, the government may say, no, don't do it. So these are certain uncertainties we got to be very clear about. It is not business as usual when you get into defense exports. It's good that all industries and all of us are conscious of that. We have, of course, as a facilitation agency, we have a Defense Export Promotion Council equivalent, which is pushing companies, and every clearance, even after the Ministry of Defense and the user concerned, be it Navy, Army, Air Force, approve it, there's a Ministry of External Affairs which plays a pivotal role in saying, go ahead, green flag, amber, pause, or red, don't, not now. We have had many experiences like that, but I think it would be unfair to hog the time for that. Moving on, I don't want to go through the list, but let's look at under three buckets. One is, if you look at, there are some things which are needed to move. If you look at a platform, the platform has to move. It could be propulsion, it could be steering gear, it could be stabilizer for the things that fly, it could be the engines, for the tanks, it could be the transmission, etc. Then there is a hull structure itself. In the case of Navy, we call it as float, but in the case of Army and Air Force, it would be a platform which flies or which goes on the land. The third is the fight, which is a weapon fit. Under any of these categories, we have within the country enough products which are proven, used by a user. And today the policy allows where the user, even if you have not, after fielding in the no cost, no commitment trials, even if you have not turned out to be L1, but still our systems have passed, we are given letters of recommendation to export. Our submission to the government is just the way the foreign country business people, they bring their defense minister, they bring their army generals, they bring their air force, air marshals, or whosoever are the equivalent, and then do, the government should look at actively encouraging. One positive step over the last 18 to 30 months that the government has taken is involvement of DAs, in our respective embassies, who are very actively talking about Indian ecosystem able to cater, and they have the pulse in the respective countries. Of course, they are for a 2 to 3 year posting, but they're able to give inputs, and there's some continuity being brought in. So that's something which the government is doing, and we have opportunities. Believe it or not, there are some places we could even sell to the Western world. But it's going to take some time, because we need to reach a maturity, we need to reach an ecosystem within the country which can cater to. Challenges are always in red, and I said, let me capture it in red. I think it's unfair to read it, all of you can read it. But challenges are, even in export, the time frames are something which continue to worry us. Because what may appear very urgent on 1st of a month, by 15th may become a little distant, and by 30th it may be as far as 93 million miles away where the sun is. So those are certain challenges which keep appearing, and unless we have a basket which can cater to a wide spectrum as a country, I'm not even talking as an industry, as a country, it would be difficult for us to rely on growing of exports. We could have 1 year where a country could order 10 ships. Okay, that may be $500 million, fine. But 10 ships don't get constructed in 1 year, they take about 5 to 7 years depending on the complexity. What do we do for the next year? What do we do for the third year? So we need to have, that means as an ecosystem for the country, we need to move in multiple planes. And that's where I think the fellow panelists will talk of their experiences where they have been able to pitch in. End user certificate. The another challenge that we faced, and which is very unique, is, let's say we want to export to country A, but there's one particular critical component which comes from country B. The country B asks us to give an end-use certificate. We can't say we use it for India. That would be falsifying our records. But let's say we say we're going to do it for this country. They say, sorry, our policy, the bilateral policy does not allow export of that equipment to that country. We can give it to you, but you have to give an assurance it's not going to that country. Now, these are certain nuances which are very unique in export. It may not be the case. We can always go to our armed forces and get an end-use and give it for our requirements, but not so much for the exports. I'm running out of time. Global geopolitics, I did speak about. Anything, anywhere is considered global geopolitics. It's a very peculiar situation. I mean, the other day we were trying to source something from a country in Europe. They said For your country, we will give you hundreds. For that country, stop. Because that country is supporting some other country who is not for us. I mean, there's no, it's enemies, enemy becomes a friend or enemy, I don't know. So those are some other nuances which go, and I think, yeah, to summarize, if I have to come and talk about what is defense, I think I've captured it in a thought form. And challenges are going to be there, but as a nation, we have reached some level of maturity. We have gone beyond the infancy stage. We are not up and running, but at least we can walk, we can crawl, maybe with some hand holding. And there's a colleague of mine, Mr. Avinash Upadhyay, who's helped me construct the entire presentation. I thought it's only appropriate that I thank him, because credit to him, nothing of this is my own. He's done a wonderful job. Thank you very much. I'm willing to take questions along with the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the detailed presentation. Now it's time for the panel discussion, and the topic is emerging opportunities for Indian corporate. So, sir, if I may request you to kindly share the opening remarks, and we can go ahead. Yes. Set the context for the panel. Yes, sir.
I have a problem if I have a mic in my hand. I'll keep on talking. Exports, I mean, while Indian exports have broadly three categories, I'm sure the ex-officers can correct me. One is we do a lot of things as part of the UN peacekeeping force, a lot of things. Not much of it is in the public domain, and very consciously. Second, our armed forces, be it on land and more at us, when the ones who are at sea, they ensure an economic protection zone for the nation. And as someone who has been involved with the Navy for long, who's been associated with the Navy for long, you know, a tank you cannot send to a friendly to a country which is not friendly and say that, oh, we are coming to see you guys. No, you cannot send an aircraft, a fighter aircraft. Whereas you can take their ship close to their zone and say, why don't you come and see what's on my ship? The fact, I mean, the moment they see your missiles, torpedoes, and anti-submarine warfare, they realize you're a strong country and keep away from troubling you. So some of these nuances are there. That was one of the key aspects that I thought I should talk about. The economic zone. The third, of course, is whenever we have to have an influence in the geopolitics, either the United Nations or in the third place, how to inculcate, or not how to inculcate, but how to encourage relation formation with countries who will be friendly to us at very critical motions. Thereafter, thereby increasing the power of India. I think that's what is three things that come to me, but I'm sure other panelists will have a lot of ideas, and I would, I don't know where to start from, but if it's okay with all the other panelists, may start with Vinayak, who's at the extreme left, to share what comes to your mind. You want to make a presentation, that's also fine. Yeah.
I don't need a presentation. Check, am I audible? Wonderful. So, a very good afternoon to everyone over here. My name is Vinayak Sen, and I'm probably one of the only guys who really needs an introduction, because this panel is absolutely outstanding. So, my company is called Armasen Integrated, and we have fundamentally two verticals. The first one is Armasen Tactical, where we focus on the design and manufacturing of a huge variety of tactical solutions, so things like bulletproof plate carriers, backpacks, belt systems. And the second one is Armasen Defense, where we're focused on the design and development of small arms and ammunition systems. Now, before I continue with that, I'd like to take an opportunity to say thank you to the Indian Chamber of Commerce for giving me this opportunity to be with this esteemed panel. It's been a learning experience just spending time with all of you in this room. Now, over the last few years, primarily what we've been focused on is, like, I understand that the main money that comes into our economy comes from our missile systems, from our aircrafts, but there is a huge market that we don't focus on, which is the low-tech market in the industry. Now, if I may just read out a few things from my points. Our work over the last few years has primarily been what most people would consider low-tech defense solutions, and quite often while referring to ourselves, we like to call ourselves tailors, because fundamentally what we do is we actually do stitch and cut fabric and put products together. But the end product that we have, the end product that we make, has very far-reaching consequences, because an average soldier, when you see him on a regular basis, he is very ill-equipped, and this is a standard across India and ASEAN and BIMSTEC countries as well. So the simple products, for example, very recently, we came across a situation where a unit was looking for something as simple as a hydration bladder, where a soldier can carry 2 to 3 liters of water. Now, this shouldn't be something very complicated. There are no barriers to entry, but we don't have a reliable manufacturer for something simple as that. When it comes to something as simple as a communications cable, so something that connects to the soldier's walkie-talkie, which connects to his ear. Again, for that, we are dependent on imports. We don't have a solid manufacturer for a product like that. I feel that there are markets like that which we are missing out on, and as Sir was earlier mentioning that, we require end user certificates, we require there's so much red tape to kind of manufacture so many products. These products are very easily doable. We already have the standing infrastructure within the country, but somehow we miss out on them. We are fundamentally focused on, slightly more technologically advanced products. So when it comes to manufacturing and qualitative standards, we've set the bar very high with examples such as our BrahMos missile system, with products like our light combat helicopter. But in most cases, it's things like an ill-fitted tactical vest or a low-quality pair of shoes that really bring our boys down. And the same case, as I said earlier, is consistent with ASEAN and BIMSTEC countries. And that is where our neighbors have a technological and manufacturing advantage. So, so when it comes to our topic today of what can India offer ASEAN and BIMSTEC, and even the world for that matter, I believe that we already have the required infrastructure, but and we have the required infrastructure to kind of fill that gap, but we can also dominate these industries very easily. What we do need now is, however, a focused push to ensure that each piece of equipment that is used by our soldiers in person as a part of their personal kit matches the quality set by developed nations. That is a very important part, because right now there are no specifications set out by the government for these low-tech equipment, but it's used on a more regular basis by our soldiers. Now, as a company, we've been focused on that area very clearly from day one, which is why all our products say proudly made in India behind each label, because we take pride in these small products that we create. And with regard to the target set, I think, sir, in your slide you had mentioned that we're trying to target 35,000 crores in defense exports. I can quite easily say that there is a capability of this low-tech market to easily kind of hit a 5,000 crore valuation, simply because we regularly get inquiries about products. So very recently, part of our country was invaded, and we had issues where the fight was pretty much sticks and stones. And immediately we got a phone call asking us if we could deliver, shock gloves. Yeah. Now that's a very simple, basic product that way, if you think of it. But there is no manufacturer in the country, and there was one, smart entrepreneur based out of Uttar Pradesh who quickly developed it, and I think it was in the news all over. So, simple products like that have a market. We aren't looking at them because, we don't really consider them to be important enough. But to target what we're trying to target, we'll need a combination, and there needs to be synergy between high-tech and low-tech. So just as an example, just in the last week, we got an inquiry for one of our simplest products, which is a belt. Now this belt it's again, as I say, there's no rocket science, so it's very easy to manufacture. But just that belt order was worth 27 crores, right? And similarly, that's one product from a decently large range of products that we make. There are plenty of manufacturers in India who can cater to those products. It's just that we need a slightly more dedicated push from our government. I'm not saying that we are the best or even being close to it, but I feel that with the right push from our defense forces, from our government, there is no reason why this particular area of low-tech products can't be dominated by India, especially because there are very few barriers to entry from manufacturers. Also, setting up of industry, setting up of machinery is relatively much more easier, and we already have the technical and technological know-how within the country already. So to conclude, I'd like to say that our country, under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, is headed towards a very, very promising future. But we won't go too far, and we may have the strongest engine, but we won't go too far if we can't fix something as simple as a flat tire. So, as we need our drones, we need our fighter aircrafts, but we also need companies in this country to cater to a huge spectrum of low-end products. And well, I guess those are my 2 cents on the matter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Vinayak. I think three things that I noted was investment. I mean, if you look at low technology, the opportunities, be it a belt, be it some set of gloves, etc. Investments are low, the opportunities are long. Every time we think of defense, we think of only missiles and fighter aircrafts and warships. It's not true. There are other things. And the ecosystem in the country, as long as we're able to match the quality standards that are required, the sky is the limit. And in your summary, you also said that maybe we could touch about 5,000 crores out of the 35,000 crores which you are targeting. Thank you, Mr. Vinayak. That's very enlightening.
One day to actually pick up some equipment from India to and sell it across. That is something which we are looking forward to. What I really want to do is get back to certain nuts and bolts of this whole Atmanirbhar policy, which possibly the Prime Minister actually he pushed it across in 2020, and I think he pushed it across with a mind to actually get this whole ball rolling, and the whole completion taking place in the next, say, possibly 5 years. But somehow what has happened, the players who were the inter-players in this, they started actually moving this ball too fast, I would say. There's always a gestation period when you put a new kind of a policy into position, and it takes time to roll that whole position into, and then you come to a resultant. But what is happening is the industry is trying to move the pace, which I don't think the PM also had it in his mind. He knew there's a gestation period. You had to go step by step, and you had to roll this out in a manner which is much more successful. And what has really happened, getting back to the service headquarters, the service headquarters have got into a real big fix, because what really has happened is there's a negative list. I think all of you are aware there's a negative list of items which cannot be exported from outside the country. I'm not saying it's negative. I'm not bringing out a negative point. I'm just bringing out a point which needs to be understood by the environment. So what is happening is the service headquarters is now taking waiver for procurement of equipment from abroad, for the simple reason because the industry has not been able to actually catch up in manufacturing, catch up in getting those things on the ball. Because if some of you go along the two corridors which were actually listed out, the corridor in UP and the corridor in Chennai, the defense corridors, then nothing come up actually. I was there recently on something else, and I had a look around that. So what I'm trying to say that there is steps, there's a procedure, and everything needs to be followed up in that. Because the service headquarters already had their 5-year plans. They had each year, which was earmarked in terms of equipment which needed to be procured. But somehow what has happened with the negative list coming into play, and the industry being told to step up its activity, possibly there was a gap in between. I'm also aware that the government took up some tremendous initiatives to actually roll this whole plan out. They have given 5 projects in Make 1. They are real big projects. Don't want to mention it out. One of these projects is with Kalyani. You're already aware of if they are the artillery, manufacturing of artillery guns. So that's an amazing kind of an achievement. And it's been put into roll, and I think they're completing that order in 2023. That's indigenous artillery guns, which is tremendous. It's a thing. Then there has been a mechanism which has been put by DG Acquisition to ensure that they look at the financial reserves. They actually step it up in terms of the whole process by which this acquisition needs to take place, and the capital expenditure per se is actually monitored on year-to-year basis. They have also modernized the QA system, the quality assurance. Now, that is something when you get into a Make in India, quality assurance becomes a real big issue, a real big show. Therefore, the DGQA, I think, is now started moving real fast. But what is happening, any equipment now being manufactured in India needs a tremendous amount of quality check. Because something when you do new in your country, what happens is, there is a chance that something may go wrong in terms of manufacturing. Then there's some IDEX project. I'm sure you guys must be aware of it. There's some IDEX project which come up. It's basically to actually give a push to a couple of these startups who are trying to get into the space of the defense space to start moving in that. And I find some of these guys are doing tremendous job in terms of startups and getting into movement. Like already bought out 68%, I think a figure is ranging from 68 to 70% procurement in the defense budget has been allocated only for domestic manufacturing. Now that's amazing. You can imagine how much stress can come on the industry, because they need to match up to the procurement of almost 70% of the Indian Army, Navy, and Air Force. That's going to be a big show. I'm sure the industry will catch up on that. The procedures and licenses have become very simple. I just want to touch in the end is how actually is a procurement thing which really comes up from the services point of view. From a very small unit like an infantry battalion, necessity gets generated. The necessity starts moving up slowly, and it comes up to the area of the command levels. I know you're already aware there are about 7 odd commands. It comes up till there. And from those command levels, it starts going into the WE requirements and stuff like that. What I'm trying to say is, it's become now a bottom-top approach for Make in India now. Because what is happening, a lot of this procurement, which is likely to take place in a couple of years from now, is all coming up from the ground. Because the requirement has to be put across in that manner. And I wanted to also touch, which I've also spoken to the Vice Chief recently, the service headquarters need to open up their doors to industry in terms of interaction. There's very limited interaction which takes place between service headquarters and the industry. They take place at a very higher level. I want, that the Army headquarters, Air headquarters, and the Naval headquarters should open up doors for industries to come there, carry out meetings, carry out discussions, carry out some of these low-level seminars at their levels where, things will get sorted out on ground. What that will help is, it'll give a outlook and a macro-level picture to the industry. It will also give us the functioning of the air and Army and Naval headquarters, because, a lot of people in the industry really don't know how they operate. They don't know how the files move in those, in service headquarters. Till the time, say for example, if I'm a defense manufacturer, if I really don't know how things move in the Air headquarters and the Army headquarters and the Naval headquarters, as well as, because there's a system in the MHA, they move in a very different manner. They actually, jump and skip certain procedures in the MHA. As far as, procurement is concerned, I'm not saying they do something wrong. I'm saying it is not necessary for them to get those approvals. While in the service headquarters, there's a process, there's a set of process. I used to be in the MO, in the military operational branch, as a youngster, when the Maldives operations are going on. You see, I'm trying to say the MO is one of the branches in the Army headquarters, which gives you the approval for the equipment. The necessity equipment approval is given by the MO. A lot of people don't know. So WE is not the one which gives you the approval. So these are a couple of issues, I think, which we can focus, and the industry needs to be educated, which will be a real great help in terms of rolling things out in short time. But I'm really happy to see there's some startups which interact with the Army headquarters at the Army Design Bureau. They're doing a tremendous job. I've seen a couple of these trials which were being conducted in Leh, Ladakh. I think we are going and we are stepping up things, and I think in times to come, I would say another 5 years, our Make in India program would be a very successful program.
Thank you, Brigadier. You covered so many things, but let me try and do justice to see if I can capture the key point. On the positives, you said the government is actually encouraging through the Make and other policies for Make in India. The gestation period is something where the time frames are a little different than what it is. The bottom-top approach today is helping the user come to conclusion in a different way, but the file movement and the paper movement does have its time process. The defense corridors were started with a very noble intention, but precious little has been is being seen on the ground. the acquisition and the quality systems with IDEX and other things are also helping the whole ecosystem move in I would say in a higher synchronous mode than earlier. But unless the service headquarters open up and make the policies a little more transparent, participation of larger industries from the ecosystem will continue to be a challenge. But the brighter side is over the next 5 years or the decade ending 2030, we would be in a position to cater to not only Indian requirements but export. Thank you, Brigadier Khera. Thank you. Air Vice Marshal, your turn. I know you have a presentation. Yeah. Miss Irene, if you could just... you can move that middle, but yeah, the large
Middle
one
one?
goes to the next slide.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Air Vice Marshal Arvind Varma and looking after the exports for Zen Technologies. Just to give you a fair idea of what Zen Technology looks, because I'm going to focus whatever I'm going to say in what we have been able to do and how it can be tailor-made for the ASEAN and the BIMSTEC countries, because they are our neighbors. They are the people who have had a similar kind of growth path as India has and what we have gone through. So we can relate to them, and I think it's a good idea to have a look east policy or the neighborhood, look at the neighborhood policy, which the government is also aware of and is promoting quite aggressively. Well, Zen Technologies is a leading training solutions company, as we call it, which entails a whole system of providing training solutions to the defense and security forces. And more recently, we have gone into the production of anti-drone systems, which is the threat of the future. And it's been launched and very successfully given to the Indian Armed Forces. Zen Technologies basically has 4 verticals, which is the simulators, that is the virtual simulators, right from basic training simulators for firearms to driving simulators, which includes tank driving and tank gunnery simulators and such like things. The second is live fire, that is the live shooting ranges, which are smart shooting ranges, which cut down on the effort required to train a soldier or a group of soldiers in a given period of time by reducing the time frames. The third vertical is the live simulation, which is providing a very realistic solution for force-on-force battle requirement. Normally, if you carry out an exercise, if you can relate, I'm sure a lot of people who are not probably aware of what the forces do, they do carry out exercises to train in which there is one enemy and the other is the friendly force. But they don't have bullets to fire. You can't fire bullets during training. So the training by itself becomes quite lopsided, or there is hardly any realism in it. So to overcome that is what we have developed using the lasers and receivers, so that every bullet or every entity in the battlefield is configured and you get a realistic feel of how the battle is conducted. Anyway, we will not go into the details of what that is. And the last one is the anti-drone system, which is part of the electronic warfare vertical of Zen Technologies. Well, when we are talking of training, now how I want to relate to what Zen Technologies does is, look around yourself. I have come from an age when there was not even a normal telephone. Whatever telephones were there in the urban area where you had to dial numbers, book a call, get a call through. And today, look at each one of you, you can probably talk to a person on the moon using your mobile. So there has been a transformational change in how we live today in every aspect of our life. So there is no reason why when we talk of defense forces, the security forces, we should train the way we were training 30 years or 50 years back. There is a need to transform, and today the technology is available. I always give an own personal example. I have 4,000 hours of flying on various fighter aircraft. In my career, in my life, right from when I joined the Air Force way back in 1977, I have not flown a simulator. So it comes as a shock to the youngsters today, but there was no simulator at that point in time. Not because I didn't want to fly or I have something against the simulators, but there was no simulator. But today, you can fly a simulator which is almost as good as the real aircraft. So that is the kind of development which has taken place. So there is no reason why our training systems should not adopt or leverage the technology which is available today. That is what I'm trying to highlight. And this goes not for the Indian context, I'm talking in relation to globally. Why we say it transformational is that today you can cut down the time of training to almost 1/5 using the systems and the technologies which are there. The Indian Army spent just about 50 million equivalent US dollars in investing in armored vehicle simulators. And in 4 years, this is not my figures, I'm not promoting the business, professionally they have saved around $500 million in terms of the ammunition which they would have spent, or the engine hours or engine time, or the tracks which they would have ruined while training because of the using the simulators or training solutions. Let me put it that way. We have improved the quality of training of our anti-tank guided missile people. I'm just giving you examples to highlight how technology has been used today. They have improved their kill capabilities by 18 to 20 folds. From one hit out of 100, now they are getting almost 95 hits on their actual firings. So that is the capability you can develop. And what the new generation training systems do, which is applicable to everybody or all the forces, is that you can train and bridge the gaps between the budgets. Today everybody talks about the constraints of budgets. When we provide the training systems, they are actually helping in reducing the budgets. It's just a one-time investment. It's not a recurring investment in your systems. And you can use the realism which has been built in because of technology to provide realistic training. Then you can monitor the progress of individuals, right from the entry level right up to their highest level of formation level performance, to know exactly what is your combat potential. That is what the commanders are looking at. Most of us who have risen to higher ranks, Brigadier Khera, who's commanded a brigade, I have commanded various bases, it's a challenge to know what exactly is your potential. So the systems today are giving you a wherewithal to know exactly what the potential, because you're mapping each one. That is the capability of technology today. And you can train for the threats which are emerging. Not what already exists, because by experience, and people who have undergone certain experiences, they know about it. You can simulate and put your soldiers through, or your entire teams through the training process to tackle the emerging threats. Anti-drone systems is one of such things. The drone threats has suddenly emerged over the last few years. And now everyone is now looking for a solution to find whether you have to kill it softly, or you have to kill it with the bullets, or with the kinetic energy weapons, or lasers, or whatever you can think of. And today you can, in case, look at the country like ours, where we have deployment across the country. You need people to, and there are formations who have to ultimately fight together. So today we have the capability of training people who are sitting in the northern part of the country, and the people who are sitting in the southern part of the country. They can actually train together in the same geospecific environment. That is the capability of technology today. Because today, internet, media, the bandwidths, everything is available. And then by using the training solutions, you are also conserving on your actual combat equipment. Say if you train on a tank simulator, you are not wasting the tank's capability of combat. You are using a simulator to do the same thing, and then when you actually require your weapon systems, they are available to you. Anyway, we'll not go into that. We'll leave it to various questions from the audience as well as from the chair to highlight further things, how technology can be developed how the Indian ecosystem or the industry which exists, and I have no doubt in my mind, in my experience of 6 years in the corporate sector after having retired, I have full confidence and I have a full faith that the capabilities which exist with the Indian industry and both, I would be more specific, in the private industry, which is not even known to our own people in the services. So that needs to be harnessed to take our defense production, exports, which can be aimed not only to BIMSTEC and ASEAN region, globally. Although Gide Khera did mention that we need to achieve the capabilities of global standards, but I personally feel that we already have the capabilities. It's just a question of recognizing and giving an opportunity or a platform to startups like what Vinayak was mentioning and to the other industry members to project and showcase their capabilities to achieve the end results. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience.
Thank you, Air Vice Marshal Arvind Verma. That was interesting from the OIT era. Many of the people here would not know what's an OIT. That's owned by a telephone. You had to pay 4 times the money and get a telephone and wait for 2 years for that. Otherwise, it would take 8 years. So from that to simulators which help maintain the life of, be it a tank, be it a warship, engines of the warship or of the fighter aircrafts. Because every time you carry out an actual sortie, you derate, the life reduces. So moving from OIT to there, I think Air Vice Marshal brought out points of how the industry is equipped to save in a direct way by terms of simulators, which he's showcased, of course, his own company, but notwithstanding that, how Indian industry is able to do that. Second, how it provides our armed forces the ability to be prepared for something which is in the future, because you can fly your aircraft, you can't fly into enemy territory and say, hey, let me drop some bombs and come. I can't do that. But it helps people prepare what is likely. He moved all the way to electronic warfare, and that is what is going to be the future of war. These things help. And all this is happening in the country is only, it's only encouraging, and it gives us joy that based on whatever has been spoken so far, from what is low-tech to what is futuristic, we have the complete spectrum. Let me request Commodore Pradhan to share his thoughts. He represents the Bharat Dynamics Limited, and I think it's only fair that he shares his thoughts. Would you like to? Yeah, I'll just... Sure. Miss Irene, I think you have to help with the presentation.
Respected Mr. Pradeep Surekha, respected Mr. Ranganathan sir, dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all of you. I know it's a post-lunch session, and being the almost last but one speaker, it's difficult for the audience to concentrate, as well as the panel specialists, and to sustain. But like a true soldier, I have stuck to the instructions which are given to me by panel moderator as well as Mr. Mukherjee to stick to the topic, that is defense opportunities in ASEAN and BIMSTEC. So I'll just take you forward with whatever little presentation I made, and then I'll be very happy to take the question and answers. I would like to thank ICC for giving this opportunity to be here and share whatever experience I as a person and now as a from the defense as well as now from representing BDL can share my views. So I thought I'll just quickly take us across what exactly are these two groups. Basically, both the groups consist of 16 countries which have a very, very significant interest in the Indo-Pacific region. The primary objectives of this grouping was the economic growth, the social progress, as well as the development, cultural development they had envisaged almost 3 to 4 decades ago. Progressively, these groups have been added, and as of now, there are 16 countries in both the groups. There are various internal issues as well as inter-border issues within these groups also. However, the security interest which binds them is the South China Sea region, which all of us know is very, very critical in almost last 5 to 6 5 to 6 years, or rather a decade. And they also share the similar food, water, and economic security challenges. And so that whatever they want to address in terms of their security concerns are mostly common. They have very, very diversified interests. But however, their staying in the group is very important for each one of them because of the geopolitical scenario which has been prevailing now. And fortunately, India has a very strong cultural and traditional ties with all the countries in this group. So let us have just a regional overview from the military perspective. In the last 2 decades, there has been a noticeable trend in acquiring technological sophistications in terms of buying a lot of weapon systems, in terms of buying a lot of aircrafts, a lot of submarines, and it is one of the most growing military spending. However, the internal or the justification giving in for induction of this thing is that they have to defend their internal issues like terrorists, like the own rebellion groups, like they have a lot of other conflicts, internal conflicts. However, this importing of this lot of sophisticated systems, as I mentioned, the aircrafts, transport aircrafts or the fighter aircrafts, as well as ships and submarines and other coastal defense systems, it is very evident that they are envisaging some counter threats from a foreign country. And what a rapid inductions they have got in the last 2 decades, it has resulted in inadequacy in terms of military resources, the technology, and the specialists in terms of military. As one of the panelists was also trying to bring out, rather I think Brigadier Sir has brought out, that anything takes a gestation period, and if that is not catered for, it results in a catastrophe. And this is exactly where India can pitch in, and India can look forward to the countries which are increasing its defense effectiveness. That means they may have requirement of a new weapon system, or they may have requirement of refurbishing or keeping their own systems which they have procured from various countries. Now, where we can leverage from the GOI initiatives, as we have, most of the speakers have spoken about change in policies as well as easing in procedures, which results in design, development, and manufacturing of the defense products. Earlier, there were not so much of transparency. Nowadays, the transparency has come in. Government is increasing. In fact, the research and development is one of the main thrusts the government is trying to inculcate, not only in the defense PSUs, not only in the DRDOs, but in the private industries. And thankfully so, 25%, that is 1/4 of the defense budget of the R&D has been allocated to the industry, which is a very, very good opportunity for the industry to take it forward. Similarly, we are aware about the launch of IDEX, which is again a platform for the startups, for the private industry, for the thing to meet the challenges, to get innovation for defense excellence. And this is, I think, one of the brightest idea which has been floated, and we are seeing the results as various speakers have brought out, how things are being made technological more better. The launch of Srijam portal for indigenization by the industry is again a very, very positive step. And even though Sir has brought out about this negative list as well as the positive list, there is definite thrust and focus for indigenization. And I'm sure slowly and steadily things will fall in place and we'll have nice products. And establishment of defense corridors, as we have seen, even the panel chair has brought out, it is a slow and steady process. We know there are challenges, but there is a certain gestation period from design to development to even productionization, and it takes time. When you want to set up an industry, there has to be clarity as to what is the end results and who is going to your probable customer. And in the weapon industry, if that focus or that information is not available, no one would invest in any of the infrastructure, whether it be DPSUs, whether it's an ordnance factory, or whether it is a private industry. So the visibility of the end product, unless it is very clear, it's really very, very difficult. Now the industry can focus, in my opinion, that there has to be a thrust on export of weapon systems and platform. So this thrust has to be taken forward in the terms of having something which is a combat worthy. Suppose we are looking at export, we know a lot of issues are there if whether it is like we have got a lot of indigenous products which are being used by the Indian armed forces, whether it is Navy, Air Force, or Army. But since the OEM or the original equipment manufacturer is within India, it becomes very easy for hand holding. But if you are looking at something for export, it has to be really be meeting the international standards. Otherwise, we will not be in a position. So, and again, if we want to maximize our export efforts, then the indigenous contents have to be on a higher side, because external dependency will not allow you, as we are rightly brought out, various speakers have brought out about the issues related to the end user certificates. The moment you have an import content in your export order, then it becomes so real challenging for the getting the EUC as well as the license clearance from the country or the company you have imported it from. Then we need to have very optimal utilization of resources to establish the cost reasonability. If the cost is not focused or there is no attempt made to make it cost competitive on the global term, we may have a product, but it may not be, or it may be forbidden for someone to buy it from India against other country. Secondly, one of the important aspects which generally we have seen in the industry, of course, I'm not talking about the big players who are already there in the export, but the small companies like the startup and MSMEs have to bring into their culture that there is something called product life cycle management, and it takes again a lot of investment and a lot of effort to ensure that the customer satisfaction through the product life cycle management is ensured. And again, this last point I already covered, to meet the customer expectation by providing customized solutions. Like today the customer, whether it be Indian customer or foreign customer, they are looking at a customized solution. They are not interested in the product what you have. They want to see, okay, this is my scenario. They'll come to you and they'll say, okay, I have seen your product, I have gone through your brochure, but this is my problem statement. Are you willing to do it for me? So industry must be aware that meeting the expectation of a customer is one of the critical aspects which one has to ensure. Then which are the areas of probable collaboration? Like I talked about the export, but export is not the only thing. It may be the main thrust or it may be the first priority. But there are a lot of opportunities when we talk about dealing with the foreign friendly countries particularly. There can be a co-production. We can get into them because a lot of countries today, we are aware without naming them, they are interested in developing like we have our own way of dealing. They also have their own way of dealing. They also would like to get their industries or their own private and public sector to get involved in terms of co-production or in terms of co-development or formation of JVs. They would like to have JVs with most of us who can deliver their customers' requirement. Secondly, they are looking at various aspects like product lifecycle support, as well as they want to develop a product lifecycle management hub, because when the product is bought, it is not just a life what is defined by the OEM. Most of the countries, including India, has something, there is always a life decided for equipment by the OEM. Beyond that, most of the countries get into refurbishment or the life extension. So this is what every country looks at when they buy and come, or rather they are interested in buying a product from you. They'll come and ask how many years you'll guarantee product support for this. If you have no answer or if you're not catered it in your whole scheme of things, then they may not be interested. So the probable business areas as far as the weapon manufacturing is concerned, and from again our point of view, we can have direct missiles which can be exported, or the launchers, the ground support equipment, underwater weapons, airborne countermeasures, underwater decoys, refurbishment and life extension, which I said is one of the critical aspects. Test and maintenance equipment, again, there is huge inventory with most of these countries, which they have procured from various sources. And even though it is little difficult, it is not too impossible to get into this particular domain, which can be a start point for any country to, because they are looking at some test cases, because we have had various discussions in the last at least 2 years with various countries and their delegates who are interested in seeing if we have any ready-made solution, or are we willing to give them any support in terms of doing some maintenance of their existing equipments. And coming to what export products, particularly BDL as a company has, is we have got various weapon systems, right from the anti-tank guided missiles to the drone-delivered bombs to the weapon system like Akash weapon system, Dasra weapon systems, smart anti-field weapons, lightweight weapons, countermeasures, dispensing systems, NAV ATGMs and Namika launchers, Helena ATGMs, Amoga 3 ATGMs. The product list is endless actually. But what we need to do is we need to work together in a focused way and see where is our strength lies and use it to not only meet the requirements of the Indian market, our customers, basically the 3 armed forces, the Army, the Air Force and the Navy, as well as cater for the requirement of the friendly neighbor countries with whom we have got license to do the business. With that, I would thank the panel to listen to me very patiently. And thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commodore Pradhan. You moved from economic growth to social progress, and you also articulated how opportunities are there for people who may be interested to work with BDL. You moved from subsystems to systems to even export of platforms. I think 2 major aspects you brought about which are very important are the product life cycle management and the refurbishment stroke life extension, because that's something which all the armed forces look for. Also, I think indirectly he mentioned, he didn't mention, but indirectly he also referred to the obsolescence management, because when we go forward, electronics, a lot of us would like to change our phones every year. It's nothing to do with the phone. We just have to make a call, but still we want to be abreast with technological development. So in the armed forces, that's very important. And in electronics domain, where it rapidly changes, obsolescence management is a huge cost. And if we combine what Air Vice Marshal shared as a simulator, I think together India can give a very economically viable solution, not only to the ASEAN and BIMSTEC, but also beyond. For the audience, I know we are almost at 15:23 and the session is another 5-7 minutes. If you're okay, first let me start by asking general questions to the fellow panelists. They've covered most of the things. At least my notes are running into copious notes are running into pages. But let me just ask a question, and any of my fellow panel members can answer this. And then, depending on the time and what ICC says, we can take a few questions. So open question first is, the Indian defense corridors have set up. I think Brigadier Kera addressed it quite well as to expectation and reality. What is it that we need to, what factors you consider essential, critical for enhancing defense manufacturing industry? Any of the panelists?
What I thought, these 2 corridors, where they can actually get expedited in terms of, these corridors coming up into infrastructure, is what I'm trying to look and where I've been speaking to people around is JVs in terms of, tie-ups with foreign vendors, because that is something which I thought was the idea of giving them that space, which was, allotted from the government per se, so that these foreign companies which are becoming partners with the Indian companies, they would like to come into these corridors. Most of the Indian companies already have their space, whether it's in Bombay, whether it's in Bangalore, whether it's in Hyderabad, so they all have that space. So I thought these corridors were basically meant for those. These corridors were meant for companies which are in the medium sectors. They were not the L&Ts, they were not the Kalyanis, and they were not the Mahindras and stuff. So they were the companies which were supposed to set up these corridors where, their manufacturing facilities could be actually set up. And, I thought that tie-up somewhere down the thing, we likely lost sight of these tie-ups, or the industry, I think, lost sight in terms of, carrying out JVs and joint ventures and all. Just a point here, because in this Defense Expo, we don't have too many foreign vendors here. It used to be a good idea to have them here so that a lot of Indian companies could come up and, partner with them. A lot of companies could start that initial conversation with them so that that could be followed up subsequently with MOUs and stuff like that. I remember in Lucknow, I don't know if you were there, sir, in Lucknow we had, I think, a whole of MOUs which was signed. I know how many of them actually became successful down the line, but there were a whole lot of MOUs which were signed. So the defense corridors, I thought, was to help out the industry to partner with foreign vendors who wanted their technologies to come here, but wanted hand-holding by an Indian company which was supposed to carry out manufacturing in these corridors. That is something. I just want to mention, I was in Sweden, I just want to mention a small aspect in how, industry gets showcased to foreigners. In Sweden, they were trying to show you a gun which was on an exhibition. Exactly 400 meters away, they showed you the firing of that gun. So look at it, how it was deployed to be exhibited as an equipment in Sweden. That means you walk in, you have a look at the gun, they tell you all the specs, they tell you all the pros and cons of that gun, then they take you 400 meters away and you see the live firing of the gun. But look at that concept in which, obviously we'll have to carry out some kind of exhibition in Pokhran or Mahajan and all, that's too far away. But what I'm trying to say is, they take so much interest because they have got limited equipment, limited time, and they do not have the leeway of, a lot of outside vendors coming into Sweden to have a look at their equipment. I just wanted to also divert away from a topic for a thing. We are in a very peculiar situation in terms of carrying out export. Most of the countries which are mentioned are in close rim of India, are actually a little bit of in a problem in terms of taking defense equipment. Some of these countries are too small because they can't procure that equipment. They've got a problem of, the cash flow, I would say that. And some of these countries are too much closer into the China Sea, any kind of equipment which is likely to also get sold out in that country will become a problem. But defense corridors, like we said, I thought it was a great idea. They wanted the southern industries to focus on those areas in Tamil Nadu and stuff like that. And some of these industries which were in the north had to focus out into the Uttar Pradesh corridor. But I think in times to come, a little bit of a push, but I know this exhibition may have actually taken that shine out because foreign vendors are not actually showcasing their equipment, or the foreign vendors are not being able to actually interact, or let's say the other way around, the Indian industry has not got an opportunity to shake hands with them.
Thank you, Brigadier. Thank you. You want to say?
So on the issue what Brigadier Khera also has brought out, sir, and as now since I am now representing the manufacturing unit, since BDL is involved into manufacturing of weapons for the Indian Armed Forces for quite some time. The peculiar part about the defense manufacturing is the dynamics are a little delicate and very, very different, sir. Because the number crunch is very, very limited as per the user's appreciation and the aspirations of the armed forces, which cannot be dictated by any other business tactic which we generally see in any other manufacturing unit. Generally, the manufacturing units will work based on certain system dynamics and based on certain philosophies. It doesn't work out in the defense industries because, as I said, the numbers are very, very less, and it gets decided by the requirements of the armed forces based on their geopolitical understanding and appreciation. And the second thing is that when the numbers are limited, at the same time, the requirement in terms of the stringent quality standards, the competitive costing, as well as the time of delivery is really, really very, very difficult. Something you just get an order which says, no, this is the emergency procurement, and it has to be delivered in 12 months. For any weapon system, it takes a lot of time. There is as it is, there is an ecosystem, there is supply chain management, there is a vendor-based, and there is at every stage of making a weapon, there is a quality check, which at times becomes little it is looked at as a negative aspect. But whether it is input material, there has to be certain quality standards which have to be met. Unless until those are met, those cannot be incorporated into a process line or in manufacturing line. In the manufacturing line, there is again a process which has to be again adhered to. Whilst the delivering also, there is a process which has to be adhered to. So there is a huge gap between whatever your product or the raw material what you buy, when it gets converted and it just doesn't get delivered directly to the vendor, because there will be acceptance criteria again defined. So this becomes really difficult. And as long as the industry understands this, that everything cannot be converted into what we call a request for proposal, RFP. Because the armed forces makes the RFP. If there is no understanding from the industry what exactly is the user requirement, then the gaps are developed, and your product, even though they are manufactured, even though they are delivered, someone will say, no, my product has not been accepted and I have met all the criteria given in the RFP. But if the item failed in the trials or in the acceptance criteria, it doesn't get accepted. So these are the challenges what the weapon manufacturing industry must understand, particularly the startups and the MSMEs. And if they are taken into consideration while they are doing the costing or while they are completely designing their product as a sellable product, it will help them to mitigate these challenges.
Thank you,
So I
Commodore.
had a question.
Yeah,
if I
sure.
may, sir. So, we were talking about how R&D, of course, takes a lot of time, right? And we've been at it for a while now. And India has been, one of the largest importers of weapon systems across. What has stopped us from aggressively reverse engineering? I know it's a slightly controversial question to ask, but what has stopped us, because you guys have been in this industry for a while, what has stopped us from aggressively reverse engineering products? Is it a moral dilemma? Because we know that our neighbors do it, day in and day out. So what has been our limitation in this matter?
I think I'll just slightly reword your question and request the AYS Marshal Arvind Verma to respond. How is current technology available in the country helping us? Maybe I'll just rephrase this question. Is it helping us only for reverse engineering? Are there any pitfalls in reverse engineering? Or are we beyond the stage of reverse engineering in many areas, at least let's say greater than 60%? Over to you, Air Vice Marshal.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. As far as the technology is concerned, see, why do we want to do reverse engineering? Either we don't have the technology or we want to take a shortcut. That's the reason why we would do it. Okay. See, it's not a very straightforward answer, or it is not absolutely black and white. Firstly, there are issues of legalities in terms of contractual obligations of the people who have bought the system from, say, abroad. We've imported the equipment and we are using it. We have signed certain contracts, so there are violations of contract which would take place if we were to do that. Those are the moral issues or ethical issues, as you may call it. And we as Indians are generally more moral than the others, more ethical than the others. So that is one of the constraints to start with. But having said that, I personally feel that the Indian ecosystem, whether it is in terms of R&D, the software engineers, our people have been doing most of the work even abroad. So that has started changing to the best of my knowledge, and today we have the capabilities and capacities where we don't really require to do reverse engineering. We can create our own stuff. The point in case we are talking of is today, maybe 5 years back, if we talked about anti-drone system, we would have looked at Israel or Russia or Americans to give us that system. But today, we have created our own systems without even taking 1% of assistance from anyone else. So that is the capabilities which are there within the country. Those are the ones which need to be harnessed so that we don't need to do reverse engineering, we can produce our own products. Okay. But whether we should do it or it shouldn't do it, leaving that aside, we do have the capability of doing reverse engineering. That itself requires a lot of capability. Everyone can't do reverse engineering, because that itself requires certain capabilities and capacities to be able to identify what the core capability or core technology is, to be able to replicate it. So I would, personally, I feel that instead of spending your time, energy, efforts in trying to find out what that core technology is, why not develop it on your own so that you have no other issues? That would be my take. And I feel we are doing okay. We don't really require reverse engineering. In fact, right now, in our field, I'm talking from our my experience with Zen Technologies, in fact, now we are scared that when we are supplying to certain countries, our product is going to be reverse engineered.
I just want to bring out something. Let's word it the other way around. Let's not call it reverse engineering. For the simple reason, we are all aware that whatever the type of technology we have, most of the core technology is not available in India, to be very frank, in most of the systems. Most of that core activity or the core equipment actually has to be exported from outside to actually make it. That's the reason why in Make in India, they put a percentage. In terms of percentage, in terms of, what is the kind of percentage which can be actually manufactured here and what is the kind of percentage which can be actually bought from outside. So till the time we actually mature in our R&D to that level, I'm sure that what will happen is we will not be able to actually carry out a full-fledged manufacturing. So the wording could be changed, but yes, reverse engineering is something we need to put a second word to it to carry out some activity.
Thank you, Brigadier. Before I hand over to Mr. Memon, is there anything? I'm sorry, we are running out of time, and we got a hint that we have exceeded our time budget. So I would now leave it to the compeer to take it forward. Thank you. Thank you, Feno panel.
So sorry to have you had to interrupt because of the paucity of time, but of course, if I can request Mr. Zulfikar to kindly share the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much. Honorable President, ICC, Shri Pradeep Sureka ji, Shri S. Ranganathan ji, Commodore Kirish Pradhan Saab, Air Vice Marshal Shri Arvind Verma Saab, Brigadier Jaspreet Singh Khera Saab, young and dynamic Vinayak Sen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to deliver the closing remarks and formal vote of thanks at the end of the very engaging program, and what also brings us to the end of this extraordinarily organized discussions and sessions of the Defence Expo 2022 here in Ahmedabad. On behalf of ICC, I take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to all the guests for your kind presence at the forum. More particularly, I want to thank Mr. S. Ranganathan, Executive Vice President of Head Weapons and Engineering Systems Business, L&T Defence, for making time out of his busy schedule and being with us here today, and for his excellent presentation, and moreover, being kind enough to moderate this session. My heartfelt thanks to Air Vice Marshal Mr. Arvind Verma, Advisor Zen Technologies, for his participation and his presentations with the insightful deliberations. Of course, I had a couple of questions for you, but we are running short of time on the stimulation program. I will. My sincere thanks to Brigadier Jaspreet Singh Khera Saab, President Hind Defence Equipment Private Limited, Defence and Aerospace Consultant, for his presence and valued thoughts. I would like to extend my gratitude to Vinayak, CEO, Armasen Integrated, for his valuable presence, and Commodore Kirish Pradhan of BDL for his presentation as well. So much exciting information and knowledge shared here in limited time and on this platform. Unfortunately, we need some more time to discuss this at length and on this very, very interesting subject. India consists of two largest armed forces and is the third largest military spender in the world, and is at the cusp of revolution. Government has identified the defense sector as one of its focus major areas for Atmanirbhar Bharat or self-reliant India. The initiative with a formidable push on the establishment of indigenous manufacturing infrastructure supported by requisite R&D. We had the pleasure to hear our Honorable Prime Minister in his powerful speech at the inaugural function yesterday, where he spoke to us about the vision and mission in the defense sector. It was indeed a very exciting experience in the last 2 days, and for me particularly, as I come from a legal background. I had the opportunity to witness some of the finest defense technologies and warfare equipments, along with a strong presence of local Indian companies in that space. I had the opportunity to meet some of the finest manufacturers and interacted with some extraordinary startups. Overall, I feel extremely proud to see where we are today as a nation and how promising our future is. I'm also thrilled to see ICC's collaboration at the Expo, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. After the encouraging deliberations of our speakers in today's session, some key takeaways can be mentioned as follows. Southeast Asian countries have shown an expansion in their defense spending, particularly over the last decade, with an increase of 36%. Currently, Government of India is focusing heavily on self-reliance, aiming to improve the infrastructure technologically within the country, since government owns 80% of the sector. This will definitely encourage the domestic employment and exports. Government of India is encouraging foreign players to manufacture in India, which will expectedly encourage economic growth and jobs and opportunities. We had the opportunity here to hear about and understand a little more about the importance of QA, the quality assurance, and the role of the DGQA, and setting up realistic training centers which helps mapping individual potentials. Policymakers may focus exclusively on attracting investment for intermediate goods in the industry, which is a starting point and can be encouraging for the original equipment manufacturers. What needs to be noted here is India has an advantage of a state that is interested in boosting defense exports, creating infrastructure for large-scale production, and addressing issues faced by private players involved in the sector. It must make use of this window of opportunity to the fullest. Without extending any further, I would like to close the program here by once again thanking all the speakers and the participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zulfikar, for closing. If I can request our guest, Mr. Pradeep Sureka, to kindly come forward and do the honors of felicitating our speakers as I announce their name one by one. Mr. S. Ranganathan, please. Thank you, sir. Air Vice Marshal, Mr. Arvind Verma, please. Brigadier Jaspreet Singh Khera. Commodore Girish R. Pradhan, please. And Mr. Vinayak Sen, please. Let's have a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for this esteemed panel members, all the dignitaries right here on stage. Thank you so very much for taking out time and sharing such wonderful information. Of course, time was not in our hands, so you can take all the questions off stage. Yes, let's take a commemorative picture, please. Thank you very much. Thank you to our lovely audience. We will be back in the next few minutes with the next session, so kindly be seated. Thank you very much.